Welcome to the Happiness Matters podcast, where we'll explore happiness at work and show you how to coach yourself to be happier there and more successful too, no matter what.
Hi everyone, and welcome to This Week. I'm Julia Seal, and today we're talking all about emojis and your happiness at work. I want to apologize in advance. I have been really sick this weekend, and so I'm recording this while I'm full of flu. But I did want to get this episode to you, so you can continue with this thread we've started in our Series 1 bonus episodes. So this week, we're taking our direction from last week's episode on Smiley, the yellow smiley face. And we're going into how Smiley is showing up in our language and the meanings we make of it. We're looking into the language of emojis and emoticons. It doesn't really matter if you're someone who uses emojis all the time in your communications, or if you don't like them at all. This episode builds on our Series 1 coaching, how we define, assess, and vision our success and happiness as we learn to coach ourselves together. In addition, you'll have noticed that each episode in Series 1 also includes some coaching tips that go beyond just the defining, assessing, and visioning work. While not the ultimate solution to what's making you unhappy, they are quick coaching tips designed to perhaps ease your current issue, to give you a fresh way of looking at things, or just to give you further insight into what's getting you stuck at work. In combination, these bonus episodes and the 12 coaching episodes are the first steps in your coaching journey with me. I have created several free coaching tools to guide the Series 1 journey, and you can download these from our website, Happiness-Matters.coach, and then also listen to the specific podcast episode that brings each of them to life. And if you want to start coaching with me, please join us in our Facebook coaching group. You'll find this at Happiness-Matters.coach on Facebook. Of course, you can also follow the daily conversation on LinkedIn, Facebook, and Instagram, wherever you like to hang out. So let's get started with what are emojis and emoticons. I'm pretty sure you all know what I'm referring about. They are such a huge part of our life these days, but I thought you'd be interested to find out where they all came from and then how they can help us with coaching ourselves. Basically, emojis and emoticons are small digital images or icons used to express an idea or emotion. You know what I mean. Emoticons are the sideways keyboard faces you can type, like the :bracket that makes the happy or sad face. And emojis are the little images that pop up as an alternative keyboard on your phone or iPad. Wikipedia has clearly had a lot of fun putting together documented evidence for the origin of emoticons and emojis. Sources go as far back as the 1600s, to the Morse code in the 1800s, and even to a speech by Abraham Lincoln, which is said to contain the smiley face emoticon. However, these popular little typographics really only came into general use after 1982, when an American computer scientist, Professor Scott Fahlman, sent an email to his colleagues proposing the use of :close bracket and :open bracket to express emotion. He was suggesting a solution to the numerous misunderstandings on his university discussion boards, where many jokes didn't land well and resulted in debates and tirades. And that's where we get the name emoticon from. An emotional icon, a pictorial representation of a facial expression using keyboard characters. They give today's cyber communications, our writings, another range of tone and feeling. Emojis were invented on the other side of the world, in Japan in 1997, when a Japanese interface designer, Shigetaka Kurita, created 176 tiny graphics inspired by Japanese manga comics, weather symbols, and facial expressions that he saw around him every day. The word emoji comes from Japanese, meaning picture, and moji meaning character, so a picture character. And the resemblance to the English words emotion and emoticon is actually purely coincidental. These little pictographs took off very quickly in Japan, and apparently Apple included them in their first iPhone launch in Japan because of this widespread popularity, and this had an interesting knock-on effect, because the iPhone then had a hidden keyboard of emojis, especially for the Japanese market, but it didn't take long for others across the world to find the keyboard and then start using it. From 2010 onwards, emoji character sets were included into Unicode, a standard system for indexing characters, which has enabled them to be used outside Japan and to be standardized across different operating systems. So that's why your Samsung and my iPhone can recognize the code as representing the same thing. Emoji and emoticon communications have now become almost as widespread as the yellow smiley face and the color yellow that we spoke about last week. They have become integral to how we communicate and how we express ourselves. In 2015, Oxford Dictionaries named an emoji as the word of the year. This was the emoji face with tears of joy, or the laugh out loud emoji, or laughing emoji. So a funny little yellow face with tears of laughter has now entered one of the most definitive resources on the English language. We now also have a World Emoji Day, with World Emoji Awards on the 17th of July. By the way, 17th of July was the day that Apple announced its iCal calendar application back in 2002, and the emoji icon for calendars is now always dated 17th July. Yet despite their uptake across the world and into so much of our daily communications, they haven't made the jump into all media quite so easily. A movie made in 2017 called the Emoji Movie did gross about $127 million, but it was the first animated film to be nominated for and win Worst Picture, Worst Director, Worst Screen Combo, and Worst Screenplay in the Golden Raspberry Awards, which just goes to show that emoji and emoticons are not completely entrenched everywhere. Yet. Every year on World Emoji Day, Unicode launches the newest emojis for all platforms, and this new global language of ours expands still further. Now, I'm using an iPhone 5 from 2013. It still works perfectly, would you believe? Other than that, most of the emojis people send me end up as question marks because my phone's software can't interpret them. So their message or meaning is now really open for my interpretation. So thank you for letting me take you on an extended squirrel moment into the world of emojis and emoticons. Let's now look into why I've introduced them into our Series 1 on defining, assessing, and visioning, and how you can use what you learned today in your own self-coaching. Let's look into the coaching relevance of this exploration. I'll go through 5 ways that you can use your own experience of emojis and emoticons to coach yourself to your happiness and success at work, right now at the start of our coaching journey together. The first technique is very similar to the self-coaching I elaborated on in the last episode on the yellow smiley face, learning to use triggers and reminders to keep you on your self-coaching path. Last week, in episode 1.8, we went into this in quite a lot of detail, expanding on the coaching tip of using the Great White Shark Flag Warning System from episode 1.6. If you're new to the podcast and you want to learn more about the coaching journey that I'm talking about, I suggest listening to episode 1.7, as it's a summary and overview of Series 1. Then, when you have time, you can listen to the full series all the way from episode 1.0. Each one is about 20 minutes long. Let me explain more. First up, why do we use emojis and emoticons? Why are they on smartphones in every country across the world? Why have they become so popular, and why are they everywhere on social media, in work emails, in family chat groups, across cultures, across multinational businesses, everywhere? And this is just the electronic communications, not the printed versions that we see everywhere. There's even a whole family of airline neck cushions for sale in Cape Town Airport's International Departure Lounge. I'll post that picture for you. Why do you think that the pile of poo emoji was one of the originals, is still one of the most popular, and has pretty much the same meaning across all cultures? And why do you think that this year's 2019 most popular emoji by a long way is smiling face with hearts? Let's be honest, the languages of the world are sophisticated, and they've been around for years, not just since 1997. And yet this pictorial language is taking the world by storm. Most trend commentators see it as if we've taken an evolutionary backward step, backwards almost to Egyptian hieroglyphics, but even further back, as we certainly can't write complex documents like medical reports in emojis, something that the ancient Egyptians could. Well, one of the reasons why is obvious. They're quick and easy to use. Using an emoticon or an emoji just saves you time on your device's keyboard. It might also be because they are almost a universal language, a language without cultural barriers, a language of symbols. Think, for example, of those translation cards when you travel to a country whose language you don't speak. It's a card printed with various useful icons that you can point to and get help from a local, like a food item or hotel or transport. So these pictures can help you transcend the limits of language. If we take the simple view that these are quick to use, easy to use communication tools, you could use emojis and emoticons the same way we discussed last week, as a reminder to stick to a new habit, a reminder to take a 2-degree shift on your self-coaching journey, as a reminder to keep you focused on a new thought that you want to think, or to breathe, or to smile. You can just use emojis and emoticons as a simple coaching technique to keep change alive for yourself. Also, you could use them as a reminder to assess where you are on your happiness ladder in the day. Go back to our episode 1.1 to learn more about the happiness ladder and how we use it to define and assess your happiness at work. In this example, anytime you see a smiley emoji, you could use it as a reminder to do a quick assessment of where you are on your happiness ladder. So where am I? Oh, I'm at a 5. And then adjust what you're doing in the moment to take you up the happiness ladder. Other than just using emojis and emoticons as these quick hack but powerful coaching tools, we can also use them to examine how we create meaning for ourselves. This is one of the core messages in Series 1. Understanding how we make meaning for ourselves is an exploration into how we define what happiness at work, or unhappiness for that matter, is for us. So not only are we re-examining our assumptions and beliefs about happiness, but we're also getting to grips with the multifaceted nature of how we create meaning for ourselves, and what are the influences and shapers of our definitions of happiness at work. So let me explain what I mean in this context of emoticons and emojis. It's clear that these are more than just pictures of communication, because these little icons have also picked up meaning along the way. Now, some of these meanings are pretty universal, but not all meanings are perfectly clear cross-culturally, and things can definitely go skew. Apparently, the middle finger emoji is very offensive in India, and WhatsApp had to sidestep a court case brought by a Delhi-based lawyer. The peach emoji and the eggplant emoji have come to mean completely different things than just a fruit and a vegetable, as have the pistol, knife, and bomb emojis. And it's just as complex when we look at the facial expression emojis. The wink emoji. Some people use it to signal their friendliness, while others use it to indicate irony or a double meaning. Making still more room for misinterpretation is the way that Unicode is displayed on the various platforms. The emoji that looks the most different across platforms is grinning face with smiling eyes. It looks very happy and friendly on Google and Samsung, but not at all the same on Apple. It's more like an uncomfortable grimace. As I mentioned in our very first episode, I am fascinated about why we choose to use emojis and emoticons the world over to express ourselves and how we create meaning for ourselves in even the simplest of things. One of my subjects at university was linguistics, where we spent time studying the work of Umberto Eco. Actually, linguistics was probably my favorite subject of all, my only consistent A academically, and I'm sorry I didn't take it further. So Umberto Eco was an Italian novelist, philosopher, and semiotician, most famous for his novel, The Name of the Rose. I really know him for my textbook, the 1984 book, Semiotics and the Philosophy of Language, which at the time had a big impact on me, even though I remember finding it very challenging. He wrote profusely on all topics. He was even an expert on 007 and considered a bondologist, which is a Scandinavian expression for an expert in the field of James Bond. I think everyone in our family is also a bondologist. Overall, this book was about semiotics, the study of communication through signs and symbols and how we interpret them, and the process of creating meaning that we all as human beings do every day. Do you remember the quote about the mystique of the yellow smiley face by Dave Gibbons in last week's episode? It's just a yellow field with 3 marks on it. It couldn't be more simple. And so to that degree it's empty. It's ready for meaning. If you put it in a nursery setting, it fits in well. If you take it and put it on a riot policeman's gas mask, then it becomes something completely different. This is what I mean when I talk about creating meaning. We take objects and we make them mean things to us. We take other people's actions and we make them mean things about us. Umberto Eco's legacy and challenge to us all is that everything needs decoding. We need to decode, to understand the meanings that we individually attach to things, to experiences we have, to words said to us, to other people's behaviors. We need to learn to decode what we're making all these things mean to us and about ourselves. When our boss gives us written feedback and ends the note with a smiley face, what do we make that mean? About our boss, but more importantly, about us. If your CEO put out a communication with an emoji light bulb in his subject line, what would that mean to you or to your colleagues? Do you see the smiley emojis as a replacement for a smile in the work environment? Do they create perceptions of warmth? Or, as a 2017 paper, The Dark Side of a Smiley suggests, does your use of smileys actually decrease perceptions of your competence by your work colleagues? In this decoding of meaning, we need to become increasingly aware of the depth of these meanings, how far they go back for us, where they come from our culture, from our parents, from our school or college days. By starting this journey of decoding, of picking apart your definitions of happiness, you'll get ever closer to understanding what makes up happiness at work for you. Not on a surface level of better coffee or longer lunches, but on a more profound level, such as purpose, meaning, and strong social connections. Can you hear my dogs in the background? Me coughing and the dogs barking. What a day. The third reason we use emojis and emoticons is that they are a language for our emotions, a universal language of emotion. This is something I'm interested in for our coaching going forward into our next series too. They do seem to enable us to easily express our feelings, our emotions, our moods. They enable us to express our tone and intention, and they even enable us to soften our words. Here's an interesting aside to my point on cultural differences, even in emotions. In 2017, researchers at the University of Michigan School of Information examined the use of emojis by 1 million users through more than 1.2 billion messages. And they discovered that people in France, Australia, and the Czech Republic use more happy emotion emoji, with the French using the heart emoji the most, living the stereotype. And people in Mexico, Colombia, Chile, and Argentina tended to use more negative emotion emoji. So knowing that emojis are the modern, easy language of emotions, how can you use them in your self-coaching and happiness at work? First of all, you can measure how diverse your language of emotion actually is. On our website, I've included links for you to help you with this exercise. For each of the facial emojis associated with a feeling or expression, you can ask yourself, how often do you access these feelings? How familiar are these emotions to you? So when you look at the emoji anguished face or hushed face, what is the emotional experience for you? As I said, this is just touching on a key topic in our series 2. But here, we are learning to use these little symbols to start assessing your emotional intelligence for yourself. One of the first steps in building your EI is to be able to identify and experience a wide variety of emotions, to have a complete emotional repertoire. We will take this much further later on, but I thought you could have fun with this now. Every time you see an emoji, you could check and see if you know what that feeling is for you. What does it feel like emotionally and physically in your body? How else can you use emojis and emoticons in your self-coaching? Well, you can use them to explore your happiness set point. You'll remember the happiness set point from episode 1.4, where we introduced our 3 happiness wisdom concepts, in particular the hedonic treadmill and hedonic adaptation. The happiness set point, very briefly, is the idea that we all return to the same level of happiness no matter what happens to us. We'll always just go back to where we were before, a bit like having a happiness thermostat inside us. This academic concept seeks to describe what happens to people who win the lottery but aren't any happier in the long run, or what happens when we get a salary increase and we're only happier for a short while. So using emojis and emoticons could actually help you to create long-term sustainable increases in your happiness and possibly shift your happiness set point. The German Socio-Economic Panel Survey is a collection of statistics that represents the largest and longest-standing series of observations on happiness in the world. According to this survey, which has been running since 1984, the trait most strongly associated with long-term increases in life satisfaction is a persistent commitment to pursuing altruistic goals. That is, the more we focus on compassionate action, on helping others, the happier we seem to become in the long run. How could emoji and emoticons keep you focused on your inner feelings of happiness, on compassionate action, and on helping others? And in doing so, you become happier in the long run. If you're someone who doesn't like using these symbols in your written communications, why not take some time to think about how you might use them? For example, to soften your message or to make it more friendly. And the last self-coaching tip you can get from this exploration into emoji communications, and a quick insight into our Series 3 on relationships, is how can emojis and emoticons increase your awareness of how you judge others? We are always judging others, or let's say assessing others, in relation to our own values, standards, and expectations. What's always useful in self-coaching is to increase our awareness of these judgments, these assessments, and specifically, how are they impacting our happiness and success at work? So if someone uses emojis at work, what do you make that mean about that person? Could you use this to try to understand them better, to be more curious and interested in why they chose to express their emotions in this way? For example, does the use of emojis irritate you? Do you see them as unprofessional? Or do you see them as collegial and feel closer to someone who uses them? For me, I see them on LinkedIn, which I consider to be a professional network, and there's smiles and explosions and muscles, and it grates me a little bit. And yet, you'll see on my social media posts that I do use them. So what's behind my urge to use them? I might want to lighten the mood, or to add a fun element to my post, or I want to communicate something at a glance. And there's another side. The more I've gone into the history of emojis, the semiotics, and the cross-cultural meanings, the more fascinated I have become in our meaning-making capabilities as humans. I now enjoy using them. They're fun and slightly quirky. They actually add to my happiness at work. And so what does this mean about me, about you, and how you might perceive me? So this episode and the one before it are both just another opportunity to question the ways you code your current life for happiness and unhappiness. To look into everything you do, why you think the way you do, why you judge or assess others the way you do, and how many of these thoughts, judgments, and assessments are really quite automatic. And how are all these things contributing to your happiness and success at work? I've taken a pretty informal and often throwaway element of our modern communications and hopefully given you 5 ideas of how you can use your interactions with emojis and emoticons to define, assess, and vision your no matter what happiness and success at work. There really is no better time to do this work together. And why not send me an emoji on one of my daily posts on Facebook, Instagram, or LinkedIn? Next week, we're going to stick with our theme of yellow smiley face and emojis and look at the human smile, which can be the most powerful self-coaching tool that you can apply to your happiness and unhappiness at work at this stage of our coaching journey. Bye for now. Thank you for listening to me full of flu. I trust the coughing and spluttering didn't get in the way of you enjoying this episode too much.
Thanks for joining us on this Happiness Matters podcast. Do join us again here next week on Tuesday. You can subscribe to this series at Apple Podcasts on iTunes, or you can sign up for it on our website, Happiness-Matters.coach. That's Happiness-Matters.coach. COACH. Also, you can join our conversation on Facebook by following us there. Our Facebook page is also Happiness-Matters.coach.